Welcome to this ITERS presentation on item 25 in the ITERS rating scale. Item 25 is all about adult supervision of children's gross motor play. So in this short presentation, that's exactly what we're going to be focusing on. As you know, the ITERS is an international rating scale that focuses on infant and toddler environments, and it is essentially a tool which helps you assess how good your early years setting or classroom is. And there's a number of standards, a number of items, and we today are looking at item 25. So as always, my next slide is going to focus on some of my good practice hints and tips and suggestions in terms of how you as early years practitioners supervise children's gross motor play. And if you're doing those things, then you're already doing well in looking at achieving a higher ITERS rating or grading for item 25, if you're already doing some of the things that I suggest in my good practice guide. And then after that, we will go on and we will look at the inadequate. So if your setting or your classroom or your group is presenting any of the inadequate criteria as part of your practice, you would be coming out at a level, grade 1. You would get a score of 1 out of 7. And then obviously we'll go on and we'll look at the minimum required to be an acceptable setting, which is your grade 3s. Going on to look at the goods, which is a grade 5, and going on to look at the excellent criteria, which is a grade 7, and thinking about what we can do to strive for excellence and to get to those level 7 rating scores. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to jump straight into my suggestions on good practice for the supervision of gross motor play in early years. So my first top tip is about being positive and solution focused with children while they're engaging in gross motor play. Even if they fight or grab resources, they try to push each other off the ride-on toys, etc. Even when that's happening, be positive, narrate to children, oh, I can see you want that, but Eli is already using that. What can we do? Are there any others that we could play with? Could we take it in turns? Shall we agree that we're going to go twice around the garden and then it's time for somebody else to have a go? So thinking about how you can be positive with the children, even if they're fighting over resources or finding it difficult, and being solution focused to help them find a way to use the resources in a way that maintains good relations. Okay. Observe when children are playing in gross motor skills. Observe what's going on. If you have this innate feeling that you need to rush in or save children as soon as they've climbed up, or you need to be near them to touch them on a piece of climbing equipment, or you're worried about their balancing, just step back. Think for a second, observe, and choose when to make an intervention. Okay? They might not need you to dive in, swoop in, and save them from themselves. They might actually be able to handle it themselves. They maybe just a foot slipped and they can correct them. So step back, observe, and choose when to make an intervention, and choose what your intervention should be. Should it be just swooping in to save them? Can you give them some guidance? Like, oh, why don't you try putting your foot here? Or is it too high? Do you want to climb down? Think about how you climbed up. Where would you need to put your foot? Offer them. Would you like my hand to help you? Okay, so that's observe and choose when to make an intervention. Actively seek to help children in developing new skills when they're using gross motor. Help them to hold things, help them to balance, make suggestions to them, provide scaffolding or support if that's what they need. Have an active inside schedule as well as active time outside. That includes dancing. Have at least one session a day where you put music on and you lead a music or movement. Either you're leading it or you're participating in some kind of, African drumming music, and you're doing different rhythms and beats, moving your body, and children can join in if they want to. Classical music with scarves and ribbons and things like that. Think about how you can have an active indoor schedule that uses music and movement, as well as having your gross motor development outside. Support children to manage risks for themselves. This comes back again to what I was saying about swooping in and saving children. You don't necessarily need to do that. Help children to manage risks, even if they're very, very small, for themselves. Avoid just diving in to save them. Provide encouragement and support and be a good role model to children. So if you've got the African beats music on and you're expecting the children to move to the music, you do that too. You show the children how to use the balancing beams as well. You take your turn. So model those things to the children. Find solutions with children for turn taking if needed. Try to avoid removing equipment. Okay, I've told you once, I've told you twice, no one's using that now. That's not the answer. The answer is to find a way that will work for everybody to use it. Pay careful attention and provide good supervision to avoid injury. And again, my last point, I've probably said it 10 times already, avoid diving in to save the children. Okay, well, let's us take a dive now and go and have a look at the inadequate. So if your classroom or your setting or your early years provision is meeting any of these criteria, you are coming out at a rating scale 1, which is inadequate. So an inadequate provision would see most interaction between staff and children during gross motor activities being negative. Blaming a child, for example, who has a problem or is hurt. Well, I told you to be more careful. Well, if you didn't jump from up there, you wouldn't have hurt your foot like that. I told you you were going to fall over if you did that. And also not being too controlling. No, don't do that. Don't do this. Do it like this. Do it like that. So if that's what's going on, you're coming out at a level 1. That's not what we're looking for in terms of supervising children's gross motor. Staff show little or no interest in encouraging children's gross motor. For example, they might ignore children as they attempt physical activity, or discourage children who might try to practice gross motor skills. Don't do that inside. No jumping there, or no way to encourage or support that at all. Staff often restrict children from moving for a long period of time. Sit still, or they're in baby bouncers or carriers or cribs for extended periods. That's not good. Children shouldn't be strapped into things or left in baby seats in the baby room for any extended period. They should only be seated in those things when they're eating, not at other times. They should be free to move and explore. And another inadequate criteria, the final one, is little attention is paid to children's safety during gross motor activities, either indoors or outside. So it might mean that children are left unattended for periods of time, paying little attention to when children are using equipment. Staff might be busy doing other things and not actively supporting or engaging with the children. So if you're doing any of those things, your practice is inadequate and needs to change. And you are currently coming out at a scoring rating of 1. Let's see what a number 3 would look like as we move on to what we expect as a minimum of what should be happening when you are supervising children's gross motor play. So staff show some interest in encouraging children's gross motor. So for example, they might provide babies with tummy time on the floor, comment positively on the child's attempt to roll over, to reach out for things, encouraging children to move about, putting on some music for dancing, helping children get up and go down, pulling themselves up and down. Staff-to-child interaction is generally at least neutral, if not positive, during gross motor, with no extremely negative interaction that could cause distress or upset. Some attention paid by staff to keep children safe during gross motor, stopping fights over materials or equipment, some attempt to supervise more dangerous or challenging equipment, and very dangerous gross motor activity is stopped by the staff who are present. So you need to be doing at least those things. If you're just doing 2 of those things, then you would be scoring a 2. If you're doing all of those things, you'll be scoring a 3. If you're doing all of those things plus more from the goods, you'll be at a 4 or above. Let's have a look at what you need to be a good practice provision class or group for this item number. So the first criteria, staff to child interaction is generally positive during the supervision of gross motor activities with little or no negative interaction. Staff encourage and support children, but do not force physical activity. They find something that each child can enjoy doing. So looking for differentiation, independence, helping individuals to find the things that they're interested in doing. Help children to work out social issues like turn taking and explaining the reasoning why you need to stop dangerous things. That's too high to jump off of, but come and have a look. We could jump off of this. This is a bit lower and there's a mat underneath it. Those kind of explanations. Staff carefully supervise children to protect their safety and to avoid injury. They help children use slides and climbing equipment safely, make sure that children use wheeled toys, but avoid bumping into obstacles or to other children in a way that might hurt them. And staff frequently provide encouragement for gross motor play. If you're doing all of these things, you're coming out at a rating of 5, which is good. If you're meeting all of the minimal and at least 2 of these, you're coming out at a 4 rating. Let's see if you can come out at a 6 or a 7. So if you're doing all of these good criteria already, let's have a look at the excellent criteria. So you would need to do at least 1 of these plus your good criteria if you're coming out at a number 6, and you would need to be doing all your good criteria plus these 2 if you're coming out at a number 7, which of course is the top scale that you can reach in the grading process. So let's have a look at the criteria. Staff initiate appropriate gross motor activity. So encourage children to run, crawl, fast, slow, place infants under activity bars so they can reach up for toys, encourage babies to reach for things, do appropriate baby exercises and activities, put on music, help 2-year-olds and above to play ball games or race, set up adult-initiated, adult-led activities. Staff help children develop new skills and use more challenging equipment. Provide support for babies wanting to pull up or stand. Help them use encouraging language. Help with walking. Show older children how to use appropriate side slides, help the 2-year-olds to use bikes and trikes, and really overall have a generally encouraging, supportive environment where children get to have a go at things. So having a look at whether these things are happening in your classroom and your provision. Remember, what we're trying to do here is to strive towards excellence. So think about the things that you can do from this slide to make your setting, your practice, your classroom even better and really strive towards excellence.